Okay, everybody, welcome again. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Ask the Experts. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Gracie, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at English Gardens. So thanks for joining our first ever Zoom webinar event. This is big for us, and we're really glad to have you. I want to introduce you to our other host for the night, Rick Vespa. Rick is the president of the landscape company, and he is also my dad and a second generation owner. So Rick. Oh.
Sorry, hi everyone.
So I wanted to briefly touch on a few things, just reminders for the night. This is a webinar, meaning we cannot see you as our attendees, like a regular Zoom call that you're probably used to these days. You won't be asked to speak or show yourself on camera. And we are recording this webinar and it will be distributed out after this event. So if you want to view it again too, that's a great way to do so. We received a lot of really great questions in our signups, and we're going to do our best to get through as many as we can tonight. And additionally, you will see a Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to submit any questions there if you have any follow-up questions that come up as our experts are answering. We'll try to get to some at the end. I know we have a pretty booked schedule, but we'll try to get to a few. And if you don't receive an answer, stay tuned for a response via email. So we will get back to you. We're set to go till about 8 p.m. If you need to sign out at any time, no problem at all. Remember, you can view this again. It will be recorded. And just to repeat, if we are unable to answer your questions that were pre-submitted, we do have a contact form that you can reach out to us at, and also somebody will be following up with you via email. So we have those questions stored away and we'll get back to you on those as well. Now I want to do a quick introduction to all of our experts who you should see on the screen now. So everyone can go ahead and wave, and I will do a quick little run through of who we have. We have Dean Darren, who is the buyer for patio furniture, tools, organic and conventional solutions. We have Daryl Youngquest. He's the buyer for nursery plants, perennials, and garden plants. Meg Gallagher, she is the buyer for house plants and containers. And some experts from our stores too. So we have Lori Hayden, who is our garden coach out of West Bloomfield. We have Jennifer Lau, who is garden and house plants expert gardener, and Tyler Vespa, garden pharmacy, both out of Royal Oak. So thank you everyone for joining us. And let's see. So I think right now I'm going to pass things over to Rick. Rick, take it away.
Thanks, Gracie. Well, I guess we'll get right into it. And one of the first questions was regarding houseplants, and our expert and buyer, Meg Gallagher, is going to handle that question.
Oh. Meg, we can't hear you yet. Sorry for the technical difficulties. One moment.
So while we're waiting, because I always learned that dead air was a sin back in my radio days, I'll talk about the question that was asked, trying to repot a peace lily in a very large container, and it died. And I think I smothered it with dirt. And Meg is now available to answer the question.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you. Yes, Jennifer, saw your question that you did try to repot a peace lily in a much larger container. And I think that that's probably where your issues came in. Peace lilies like to be a little tight, root bound in their pot. So when they're transplanted into a larger container, those roots go wild looking to grow, and they just don't grow in the fashion that they would in a smaller container. So typically what we recommend when you repot a pot is to choose a pot that's 1 or 2 inches larger in diameter than the pot that you're taking it from. It's like that goldfish effect, where if you put a little goldfish in a really big thing, they're not going to get much bigger. They're, they just need time to acclimate to their environment and to stay root bound. There's a lot of houseplants like that like to be root bound, that don't do well replanted in larger containers. But it's a great question. We always get a lot of questions about repotting because it's a really important part of being a plant parent or raising plants or whatever. And there is a lot of information that we have about that. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to Q&A them, and we'd be happy to answer all your houseplant care questions.
Okay, thanks, Meg.
That's okay. You're welcome. Thank you.
And remember, you can always come into one of the English garden stores and see our experts in the stores for any plant problems.
Absolutely.
So this time of year is a time of year we get an awful lot of lawn care questions, and our expert and the buyer for the lawn care category, Dean Darren, is going to address some of the questions that were submitted there and give you some great tips. Dean?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. We had a lot of great questions this time of year. We have a ton of people coming in with lawn care problems. Elaine and Chanel had a couple questions about growing lawn in full sun and also brown spots. And I had a lawn for many years in a shady area, and that's a very difficult place to grow a lawn. When you have full sun, it's a great area. Picking the right grass seed, making sure that you have irrigation, making sure your soil is good. And this time, today, there's so many different products out there that can help with your soil. We check your pH to make sure that's correct. And growing lawn shouldn't be hard at all. It's a very easy thing. They've really advanced a lot in grass seed also. So the new types of grass seed, one we have is called Black Beauty. I grow it at home in my front yard, and it does wonderful. It's easy to grow, low maintenance. So come in the store, take a look around, talk to our experts, and we can help you with those kind of things. There was a couple other questions from John on crabgrass and Linda on grubs. Two other big problems, weeds and insect control. Whenever you have a problem in your lawn, you want to bring in a square foot of your grass, about 12 inches by 12 inches, maybe about 3 inches deep. Try to carve that out. We're going to send you back home with it. But if you bring that in, we'll be able to look at your lawn, look at your soil, and diagnose what your problem is. If you have a small patch, you want to take the edge of it. If it's a big patch, let's say 3 feet around, make sure you go to the edge of the patch where the green and the brown are meeting each other. And that's where you want to take that 1 square foot section, put it in a box or a tray, bring it in the store. We can diagnose what's wrong with your lawn. We can tell if it's a disease or an insect or possibly weed damage even. But crabgrass is an easy thing to control. Right now is the time of year you want to do it. Crabgrass preventers are readily available. The Scott's 4-step program has it in it. But there's also more questions that we're going to want to ask about if you're going to seed or not. And crabgrass preventers can't be used with grass seed. So if you're going to be doing any seeding, there's a way to do that with a crabgrass preventer. So come in, see our experts, and we'll be glad to help you. And lastly, we had a question from Carlene about ground covers thriving in a swampy area where grass won't grow, back of a yard, low area. And there's some great plants for these, this type of spot. Snow on the mountain would work great. Houtunia or chameleon plant would work great. And Lysimachia would be some good choices for some ground covers. But again, there's probably a few more. Come in and we can help you and show you those plants. Rick, I think you're muted.
Thanks for bearing with us, everybody. Zoom, it can be a little complicated sometimes, the muting, the unmuting. We appreciate you guys. All right, so while we work on this, I'm gonna take over for a little bit. Thank you, Dean, for answering those questions. Super, super helpful, great information.
You're welcome.
Yes, and so one thing with planting season is soil is a hot topic these days, especially for, you know, new gardeners, beginning gardeners. Daryl, we have Daryl here with us tonight. He's gonna help answer some of those common soil questions that we received.
Thanks, Gracie. I see that Marcia and Julia asked about amending clay soil. A lot of people have clay soil, and it's a rich soil. It's got a lot of nutrients in it, but the trouble is the particles are so small, it holds lots of water and doesn't allow the plant's roots to get air, which they desperately need air as well as moisture. So amending your clay soil is very important. Sometimes it's a losing battle if you keep digging a big hole and putting soil into a clay hole. It just absorbs all that water. We like to plant things high in clay soils. Make sure you amend the soil with the English Garden soil conditioner. You can also use some gypsum to help with that, but really the soil conditioner is much better for it. Stop in the store. We'll give you some guidance. We have some handouts that show how to plant in clay soils or any other type of soil. I see that Leslie asked about, you know, soil testing. You can just bring in a sample of your soil. I think we want a cup or two of your soil, probably about 6 inches deep. Bring that into the store and we can give you a simple pH test or a more thorough NPK, that's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. Those are the nutrient values that your soil has, and not only tell you what your soil is, but also give you recommendations how to improve that for the desired plants that you want to grow in that area. Susan also asked about the soil test for alkalinity, so it's the same type of thing, but she put the spin on it, like, how can I change it for the plants that like the opposite? It is really difficult to change the soil that much for a plant that likes the opposite pH. So if you're trying to grow an acid plant in a very alkaline soil or vice versa, it's really a losing battle. You should be trying to plant the plants that will thrive in that particular soil level. Otherwise, you're going to be amending it every year. But, you know, have your soil tested so we know exactly where it's at. Bring it into the store and we can give you recommendations on fertilizers and other organic types of amendments. Organic types of soils is really the key to acid, giving you an acid type of soil, which most of the plants in our climate like to grow in. But there are a few plants that thrive in an alkaline soil. Mary Lou was asking, what's a good soil for a vegetable garden? Organic composts are going to be your best bet. Cow manure is great. Anything with peat moss adds a lot of organic matter to it. There's a lot. We have one called Organimax. That's a really great soil. And then you want to make sure you're adding the beneficial microbes to the soil, which is like mycorrhizae, fungus, and bacteria.
All right, Daryl, thank you. Great information. I think that covers all of those questions, right?
I think so. If
Great.
you have any other questions about that, just, shoot us something in the chat or in the Q&A.
So another key topic at this time of year is growing a vegetable garden and growing fruits and vegetables. Super on trend thing as of the last year or so. It's really gained a lot of traction. So we have Jen Law with us here to tell you more about vegetable gardening.
Hey folks, yes, victory gardens have been very popular this year. It is nice to be able to grow your own food for so many reasons, but I want to get through some questions here because there are some specifics. One of them, the first one here, Elaine wanted to know about planting your vegetable garden. When do you start to do that? You want to do that now, but you can't plant everything right now. This being Michigan, it's not the longest growing season as opposed to say down south. So, there's sometimes, you think you want to put something in as soon as you possibly can, but I want to tell you that can be the wrong thing to do. When the soil temperature is as cold as what it is now, people tend to think that, the air temperature is warm, but when the soil hasn't quite yet warmed up yet, some things stay stunted permanently. So you have to be careful. Come in and ask us which ones you plant now. There are cool weather, things that you can plant now. Lettuce, they don't care how cold it is. Generally speaking, they're fine. Kale, peas, broccoli. But there are some things like tomatoes that you need to wait on. I never plant them until June 1, actually. So, and in regards to that, because their growing season is maybe a little bit shorter, she asks about whether you want to use transplants or seeds. Seeds are fabulous. You can grow different varieties, because there's thousands of different types of plants. But I always plant starter plants. It's easier. Someone else has taken that 2-month long process for me. And I trust local farmers. They know what they're doing, and it feels good to, take from them and just place it right in the ground. Very easy. So make your life easy, especially as a beginner. Moving on, there are questions. I have them written down here. Is it Leslie? Yeah, she asked about specifically tomatoes and cucumbers. She's not quite getting them to thrive. You very well might need some fertilizer in the soil. I use a nice organic rich blend. I do not plant these until it's warm enough. That might be a reason why they're not thriving. So June 1, I really don't trust Michigan weather before that, because we can get a day like today when suddenly the high is 40, but yesterday it was 60. So it's just a lot safer that way. When you plant them, I use some compost, I use some biotone, some starter fertilizer, gets them going. Every month or every couple of weeks, I give them a nice organic fertilizer to keep them going, consistent water. I take out the bottom leaves about a foot up to make sure that, especially your cucumbers, don't get downy mildew. Water can splash and cause a lot of fungus problems. So come on in and talk to us, but I want to give you some good tips to start with there. Garnetta is asking about, this is a real unusual question. Sweet potatoes. She starts them in water. She knows how to do that, but she's asking if there's any other way. The reason why she's asking that is sweet potatoes are kind of, not common here in Michigan, but sweet potatoes can take a long time to root in this common way in which you have them, you stick in the potato, halfway down in water and you let it form roots. It takes a long time. Here's a quicker way to do it. If you take the whole potato and you stick it in some soil, and just like halfway into the soil. So I want the top half in air and the bottom half in soil. And I need to put a heating mat underneath it. It's not typically 85 degrees in our homes this time of year. I put down the heating mat. You can get one here at English Gardens, and boom, a couple of weeks later, you've got sweet potatoes ready to go. So I hope I answered your question there. And then the final question is about strawberry plants. Last year, this gal, Laura, she planted them in a raised garden bed, which is wonderful. But she said it was rather cluttered, that it was a great big, huge, mess, and didn't quite understand why. Maybe what you didn't know, and it's understandable that you didn't know this, not everyone knows this, how big is the plant going to eventually get? And strawberries need a little bit of room. Strawberries actually grow off daughter plants and they multiply that way. So you didn't know that this one little baby plant is actually going to get a lot bigger. Plan on, it says here that you've trimmed off the old leaves. That's wonderful. Plan on there being space for at least a foot all the way around that plant. Okay, so that it is ready to grow. And if you want to put some straw underneath it to keep the berries that come off fresh and out of the soil, that's, by the way, why their name is strawberry. Little history with our gardening. So I hope those answered your questions. Great questions, and come in any time we can talk to you about it, because it is a big topic, but you can do this. Rick,
Thanks,
back to you.
Jen. Great information. If I may, I'll add a couple of tidbits. I like your advice about starter plants versus seed starting, but we know that seed starting is pretty popular. And one of the things I always like to tell people is if you do want to do seeds, the package is a wealth of knowledge in helping you time out the whole process of starting seeds to getting the starter plants to putting them out, danger of frost, all that good stuff, right up to harvest. And then the other thing that is always, I think is a kind of an amazing thing is planting tomato plants. Because most plants that you plant them at the surface level that you buy them in. If they're in a pot, if they're a B&B plant, you pretty much maintain the soil level the plants were that you purchased the plant at. Tomato plants, you plant deep. You actually bury the stem 1 or 2 inches in order to, the plants thrive that way. I'm not really sure of the science behind it actually, but anyway, they do like to be planted deep. That's an interesting little tidbit on tomatoes that I don't think everyone knows. Let's see. Okay, I think we're back to Daryl now with some questions about growing roses, getting roses to bloom. Oh, sorry, I think I missed a spot.
Daryl's gonna cover hydrangeas
Yeah.
now. We're gonna get to the rose blooming questions after this. But we got a lot of requests on hydrangeas, which is a very popular topic these days. So people had similar questions, pruning and trimming and all that. So Daryl, take it away.
Well, hydrangeas are my favorite thing. Do you guys see me? Okay, it didn't switch my view. Hydrangeas are my favorite thing. If you could see my yard in the back, you'll see all the brown flower heads from last year that I haven't pruned off yet. But Jacqueline is asking, where can she find the white snowball hydrangeas? You can find those at English Gardens. Actually, we received a shipment today and tomorrow. We're just starting to get the Annabelle type hydrangeas in. So come on by, take a look at them. There's a few different varieties. Annabelle, the tried and true traditional ones, been around for a century, big softball sized blooms to it. Then there's newer varieties like Limetta or Invincible Ruby, Invincible Spirit, Wee White, and Mini Mauvette. Now, a snowball type is either going to be a white or pink, and you can't change the color of it. But we'll have all the varieties. Come on, take a look and see what we've got coming in. Margaret was asking about Incredible hydrangea, that she'd like to prune it. Do you prune the flower head off or do you cut the plant back? So you can do both, either or none of the above. There's a certain point just below the flower head where the stem dies out. So you can prune that off, or if you want to keep the plants a little shorter and bushier, so it comes out nice in the springtime. Cut the plant down to about 1 foot to 2 foot tall. It will produce flowers every year reliably. The Annabelle types, or arborescent type hydrangeas, are the most reliable hydrangeas. They do great every year. Janice was asking about her endless summer hydrangeas that barely produce any blooms. We hear this a lot. And the situation is our winters are a little too cold for the macrophylla hydrangeas to really perform like, you know, we see those beautiful pictures of Martha's Vineyard or wherever, where they're just big, beautiful blue flower heads or pink flower heads. So the key to getting your macrophylla hydrangeas to bloom is protection through the winter time. Put some burlap around it. When you're raking all the leaves, throw all the leaves into that little burlap enclosure, and you want the stems to not freeze out. And if our winters are hard, they'll freeze to the ground. You get lots of leaves, but no flowers. This was a mild winter, so I think we're going to have lots of macrophylla hydrangeas bloom really nicely this year. Teresa was asking about where's the best place to plant a hydrangea. You have hydrangeas that never bloom. So, you know, hydrangeas will grow in sun or shade. They do bloom much better in the sun than they do in the shade. The panicle hydrangeas need the sun. Arborescent, the Annabelle types, or the macrophyllas, a part sun is the perfect spot for it. Half day sun is perfect. They will do okay in the shade. You'll get less flowers to it. Another thing, unfortunately, that is one of the main culprits people don't get blooms on hydrangeas is deer. Deer will eat the flower buds off. Sometimes you don't even notice it because they will just come along and they'll just nip off just that little fresh growth. And it looks like the plant's doing good, but you never get flowers to it. And Katora was asking if you can move your never blooming hydrangeas in the spring. You can do that. It's getting to be at the point where it's a little late. You really want to move plants that have been established in the ground when the plant's asleep or when it's dormant. So fall time after Halloween is the best time to move things. You're disturbing the roots, you're putting it in the ground, and it's got all winter to work on regrowing the roots when it doesn't have any leaves that it has to worry about providing nutrients to. If the plant's not been in the ground too long, it's probably okay to move it right now, but you know, here's a couple tips on that. Have your hole where it's going to go already dug, and dig the plant up either towards the evening when the sun is down or on a very cloudy, shady day. When you can do it when there's not that much sun stress, you got better results. And make sure you treat that established plant that you're digging up just like a new plant. You want to add good soil to it, like the English Garden soil conditioner and the Espoma biotone. We always recommend that for any transplanting of any type of plant. And that gets the plants off to a really good start. If you, and I'm sure you do, if you have any other questions on hydrangeas, shoot us something in the chat and we'll try and help you out or submit some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl. I apologize for losing my spot. Needless to say, I thought I was an expert at remote learning and that kind of thing and meetings, but I had my phone on mute and I checked it and it still rang. And it kind of took me off of my my game a little bit. So now we have the question about roses and blooming. So if you handle that, thank you.
Okay, about roses, Elaine was asking that her roses bloomed really nice in the beginning, but then the flowers are smaller later on. Roses are heavy feeders. They need a couple things. They need sun all day, a minimum of 6 hours of hot sun, not 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening. You want that middle of the day, intense sun. So if I'm getting a good suntan, your roses are probably going to do good there. If your roses were doing okay and then in the beginning of the season, and then they start to dwindle out, it's either a nutrient issue. We like to use Espoma rose tone. That's a really good fertilizer for them. The other issue could be they're planted in an area where in the spring, the trees haven't leafed out and they're getting some sun. And then as the spring and summer progress and it gets shadier and shadier, they're not getting as much sun as you think they were getting. That is a culprit to a lot of plants not blooming properly. Deb was asking what's the best fertilizer and how to shape the roses and what to use for disease. That's a lot in there. So the best fertilizer, we like to use the Espoma Rose Tone. Roses, they're beautiful. They are a little prone to some diseases and some insects. So there's some great Scott's products for that. Stop them to the garden pharmacy. We'll help you with your problem, whether it's black spot, aphids, Japanese beetles, rose slugs. There's lots of things. We've got the solution for your problems there. And then how to shape your rose. If it's a garden rose, you want to be pruning that back to about 8 to 10 inches above the crown in the springtime. That will allow the plant to bush out really nicely and not get too tall. If it's a shrub rose, you can prune those with hedge pruners periodically just to shape them and keep them nice and round. I like to do all of my shrub roses, trim them in the fall. So in the springtime, they flush out their new growth nice and bushy. But the garden roses, I tend to leave a little taller and then prune those back in the spring after I see, you know, where the canes have died to. They also do need some winter protection. A rose cone is best for your garden roses. Shrub roses don't generally need that type of protection. Elaine is asking about the clematis, how you get very few flowers. That is either a sunlight issue, it's probably not getting as much sun as you think it is, or the same problem with the trees, it's getting some sun early in the spring and then the sun kind of goes away as the forest or the trees fill out. Or it's possible it's getting pruned at the wrong time of the year. There are different types of clematis. There's clematis that bloom on new wood and clematis that blooms on old wood. And if you prune the wrong one at the wrong time, then you're pruning off all the old wood and you don't get any flowers on it. If you know the named variety, we can help you figure out if it's a new or an old wood blooming variety and get you the proper time. Bring that information into the store, garden pharmacy, or the nursery associates. They can help you with that. Laura is asking about her peonies, why they didn't bloom last year. Foliage looks good, but they're not blooming. So peonies, you know, same thing. They need lots of sun to bloom. You know, it might be that they had sun where they were planted and then things have gotten bigger over time and now there's less sun, or there was sun in the spring and then a little later there's less sun, so those flower buds might develop and never open. That old thing about the ants, you need ants on peonies, that's not true, just ants are there. But a peony doesn't require ants to open the flowers. Another thing that can cause a peony not to bloom is that they're buried too deeply. The eyes of the peony, little buds, they have to be slightly above ground. So if you see those when you have the peonies planted, that's good. If you're burying it or putting fresh soil or fresh mulch over the top of your peonies, you want to stop that because that will prevent the peonies from blooming. Kathy was asking about the easy way to get non-blooming hibiscus bushes to bloom. Now there's 3 different types of hydrangea or hibiscus. There's hardy hibiscus, which is a perennial that comes out of the ground usually around end of May, beginning of June, and then it blooms in the summertime, and then it dies back down to the ground each winter. There is Rose of Sharon or Althea. That's a shrub form of hibiscus that has woody stems that are above ground through the winter time, but loses its leaves. That one just blooms in the late summer till frost, but it's one of the last plants to leaf out. So when a lot of other things are leafing out in the springtime, the Rose of Sharon is still barren sticks. So give that some time. And then the third one is a tropical hibiscus, which is what we call a patiotropic. It likes to grow in Florida just fine. It'll grow here in the summertime, but it won't survive our winter. You can bring it indoors. So I'm not sure what type of hibiscus you have, but if it's the, you will have a problem with deer on a hibiscus. So if you've got hibiscus like the hardy hibiscus or the rose of Sharon, and they're doing fine, they're just not blooming, odds are you have deer that are eating it, or you don't have enough sun to produce the flowers. That's another reason why. Again, if I didn't get all of your answers down to what you need, just send us something and we'll try and get you better answers. Thank you.
Some more great info, Daryl. Hey, one question. Did you talk at all about watering with roses? Is there maybe a specific tip about that that's important?
Well, since roses are susceptible to disease, it's really a good idea not to get the foliage wet, especially towards the evening hours. The best time to do any watering really is early in the morning, so any water that sits on the plant evaporates off relatively quickly. If the plant's getting watered towards the evening and it sits there for a long time, you'll get black spot and powdery mildew funguses on roses, and that can be a problem. Best way to water really is at the base of the plant.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so well, we want to live with nature and live in harmony with all of the critters out there, but sometimes the critters get the best of us in the garden. And we have what we call a garden pharmacy in all our stores. And one of our garden pharmacists, Tyler, who works in the Royal Oak store, is here to answer some of your questions about critters. Tyler, take it away.
Thanks, Rick. So we'll start with Maggie's question. So Maggie had a question about repelling moles from the yard. The best way to repel moles, I like either the poison mole worms, because moles, everybody thinks that moles eat grubs, which they do, but they eat earthworms more. And earthworms are beneficial bugs, and so it's very hard to actually rid your soil of earthworms. So they make poison moleworms for that reason, and you can reapply them to the trails and burrows as needed, and they come with marking flags. And then the mole repellent is another great product that you have to apply about 4 days in a row and drive them in a particular direction, hopefully the woods, to drive them out. So one of those again is a repellent, and one is the poison moleworms is actually a killer. And now Michelle's question was about groundhogs, skunks, and raccoons. That one's a little bit tougher, keeping them out permanently. I would say planting things that naturally keep them away, like lavender and maybe castor bean. And then we sell Epsom salts. They don't like the taste or smell of Epsom salts. Chicken wire is always another option. You can try to create a barrier with chicken wire. And also, this is a little bit more of villain-like, but agricultural lime burns the feet of groundhogs, so they don't like that on their feet. And then moving on to Janice's question about deer. We have loads of deer repellents in the store. My favorite one is Plant Skid because it's blood-based, and the deer believe that there's a predator nearby, and so the blood is known to last a little longer than some of the other repellents that are more just scent-based. So it's psychological for the deer, as opposed to just, I don't like this, I'm going to go somewhere else. And that'll last for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then you got to reapply it throughout the season for full control. The Vox urine and coyote urine is another good repellent because it works the same way as the blood. That may repel a skunk or a raccoon from the area as well. And I think that answers that. And then the last question, I believe, was the one about birds nesting in pot hanging plants. So I'm going to pass that on to Rick.
Hard one.
Oh, are we back, Rick? Okay, good.
Yeah. Sorry. Did you hear me say thanks? Sorry, my internet broke up a little bit there.
Yeah, I think we were freezing, but you're good now.
The answer to the question is not a simple one. Basically, you know, there are some products we have, this product called Bird Tanglefoot that can discourage birds from certain areas, but I don't know how you would have used this effectively in a potted plant. One thing that comes to mind, I've never really tried this, is putting some sticks in the pots in the open spaces to discourage them from actually going in there. That might work as sort of a non-invasive, non-chemical, non-repellent type of thing. I think that would be helpful. And the thicker the pot is, the more material that's in there, the less likely that you're going to have birds nesting in there. But I know the feeling, because last year we had this big, beautiful begonia hanging basket, and a robin decided to use the center of it for a nest. And so that begonia didn't look quite as good as it normally would, but we had the added benefit of being able to watch the parents take care of build the nest, take care of the eggs, and hatch all the youngsters. I even rescued one of the youngsters from the lake because he flew into the lake. But enough of those stories. You know, in our garden pharmacies, we carry all kinds of products, organic and inorganic. We have solutions that are friendly and some that are not so friendly. And we try to give you the best alternatives and give you the recommendations that are going to be best for you. So, and Tyler does a good job of going through the various options, as do the other pharmacists in our stores. So thanks, Tyler, on that. Appreciate your time. And the next question is about weeds and again, those pesky weeds, and how do we deal with those pests, Ty?
So for weeds, so first off, I just want to say, you know, you're never not going to have weeds. Nothing prevents weeds all year. Nothing kills weeds all year. The first question I got on weeds was from Carol. She was asking about violets and another creeping one. She didn't know what it was. Could be Jenny or the creeping Jenny, creeping Charlie is what I think of. So the best product I recommend for that is the Ortho Weed Be Gone Chickweed Clover and Oxalis Killer. And that one, in order to kill those weeds, you spray the herbicide once a week, and it can't rain or sprinklers can't go on for a whole day. And you spray it once a week until the weed turns black. And the reason you do it until the weed turns black is because that's when you know the chemical had time to complete the kill. If it's yellow or brown, you need to spray it again. Otherwise, it's probably going to come back. The next question was from Dawn about killing some plants she had coming back every year. So this is a tougher one. If the plants are just perennial things and there's nothing around that you're worried about, you can use Roundup. And that will kill pretty much anything. So just spray that. Again, it's a once a week until it turns black type of deal. Certain things I would always tell you to try to remove manually, because you would spray so much chemical into the earth that you could do some, possibly do some damage. So, some things are, if it's that difficult to spray or continually spray, I would recommend pulling it. And then there's preen. Preen is a weed preventer. It probably wouldn't keep the plants away permanently, but you can always pull them and kill them with Roundup, or again, apply preen to prevent that stuff from coming back. And then the last question was another one about perennial daisies. Again, it depends on where they are. If it's in a garden or a vegetable garden or a flower bed, I'm going to say pull them, because Roundup, again, is like your only option. And if any of it gets on the plants or anything that's desirable, it's going to kill them. So, in the past, we would tell people to put up cardboard around their desirable plants and spray Roundup. That's still a highly valuable option. And we do have a couple organic options. Natria is one that'll do weed and grass killer organically, and then burnout as well. So, just stop by our stores. It all depends on where it is. Again, if it's a area with other plants, we need to be weary of how we're doing it, especially if it's windy. All right, pass it back to Rick.
Thanks, Ty. If you come into the stores and you look at the garden pharmacy department, you'll see an enormous selection of products. And Ty does not have enough time really to get into the nitty gritty, but if you come into the store, we can help you select the best product for the problem that you have. And we carry so many different products because there are so many different things to control in different places and different situations. So thanks, Ty, for that great answer in such a short time. Okay, next we have some questions about just specific plant care tips, dividing, transplanting, pruning. And our garden coach, Lori Hayden from the West Bloomfield store, going to field several of those questions. Lori?
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. So we got a few questions about bulbs. Elaine and Joanna, you were wondering about when to purchase and plant. Spring flowering bulbs are purchased and planted in the fall. These are your tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, and crocus, to name a few. They need a chilling period to initiate flowering. You will find summer blooming bulbs at all our locations now. Summer blooming bulbs you can plant as soon as the ground warms up and the threat of frost is gone. A great option is to start them indoors and move them out after the danger of frost. I started my elephant ears already. Dividing and transplanting was another hot topic. Sue Ann Bronson was wondering about timing for dividing and transplanting hostas and other perennials. Spring and fall are great times to divide and transplant perennials. Hostas are emerging now. You can see the points, they're just coming up. They're probably less than 6 inches. So dig them up and take the opportunity to divide if they're really big. So right now is a great time to divide and transplant your hostas. If you have spring bloomers, transplant right after they bloom or wait until the fall. Jerry and Deb needed some guidance on technique for transplanting azalea shrub and yellow daylilies. The best time to transplant daylilies are in the spring when the shoots are beginning to emerge, and they are now. Dig up as much as a root ball as you can and plant it in your new hole. Now treat this as a new plant. You want to amend the soil, add a spoma biotone, which will help get the root system established. For transplanted an azalea, the best time is spring before new growth starts. Make sure you get plenty of the soil on the root mass when you move it, and don't forget to hydrate the shrub. If it's too large, you may want to prune it down before transplanting. So the issue right now is some of the azaleas are blooming, so you may want to enjoy your blooms and then immediately transplant. Now, a few tips for trimming. Patricia asked about a butterfly bush. I just pruned my butterfly bushes this week. Spring is a great time. If you have a mid-sized to large bush, I prune it down to 2 to 3 feet from the ground. This is the first year that it didn't die back to the ground, just like some of the hydrangeas. If you have a dwarf bush like pugster, I just clean up the dead branches. Joanna asked about trimming shrubs. A good rule of thumb is to trim shrubs once it finished blooming. Leave the spring flowering shrubs like lilacs and azaleas to be pruned after they finish blooming. Pruning now will remove the flower buds. This is the time to prune, right now is the time to prune shrubs that bloom from June or later. Late spring is an excellent time to trim your evergreen shrubs in your landscape. Trim just after the emergence of the spring growth. This would be like your yews and boxwoods. Tanya asked a great question. Do you move spring plants to plant summer flowers? Well, that depends. If you are planting in containers, yes, you can switch out your spring plants like pansies to summer annuals like supertunias. If you're asking about landscape plants, it depends. If you have spring blooming flowers like daffodils and tulips, wait until the leaves die back to the ground, and then you can plant your annuals around the bulbs. They will fill in nicely. If you were asking about swapping spring perennials for summer perennials, the answer is no. This is where you want to have a plan, a steady succession of blooms throughout the season. We offer in-store design services at all locations to assist you. And Monica, she asked about will impatiens do great this year? Absolutely. My favorite impatient is the Beacon impatient. I've been testing it out for the past 2 years. I absolutely love it, and it's going back in my ground this year. I am Coach Lori, and you can find me at the West Bloomfield location.
Thanks, Lori. All great information. So last but not least, we had a number of plant questions, specific plant recommendations. And Daryl is going to be reaching out to many of you directly offline with responses to those questions. So look for that via email. And so I'm going to just take a moment and give you some of Rick's tips, I guess, general tips about gardening. First thing is the right plant for the right place. It's always a good thing to start by making sure the plant you're choosing is the right plant for the place you want. It'll make a big difference in a lot of different things. Most importantly, how well the plant does. It could actually affect how much water, how much fertilizer, how much care the plant needs, depending on where you put it. And obviously, if you put the plant in the wrong place, it's probably not going to do well or even survive. So the right plant for the right place. Next thing you've already heard, soil test. pH is so important because pH determines how nutrients are delivered to the plants. And the proper pH will make a big difference in how plants are able to absorb nutrients from the soil. And then the next thing is feed plants, feed your plants in your lawn. These plants need food just like we do. And don't underestimate the power of fertilizer. And then beyond that, use it right, use the right amount. And there's different fertilizer for different plants. Fertilizing annuals, for instance, is a process that starts with planting and goes right through the entire season with time release fertilizer, a starter fertilizer, time release fertilizer, and water soluble every 10 days or so throughout the season to maximize the blooms you get from those annuals that we plant every year. And then other plants, a little different approach. Starter fertilizers are always recommended for planting, but then you might do a different regimen of fertilizer and definitely different blends of fertilizer for different plants. Again, you can find all those products and get all that information in our stores. Watering is essential to plant survival, and the proper watering, not too much and not too little, is very, very important. And by the way, watering can make a big difference in something I'm going to say next, and that is that gardening is kind of a mix of science and art. And, you know, every time I'm in the store and somebody asks me a question about a plant and I start to answer them with the scientific answer, I often get responses, oh, well, I planted that here and it did just fine. Case in point, hydrangeas don't really love the really sunny, hot spots in the garden, right? But if they get enough water, they'll do fine. So begonias and impatiens aren't known for the regular impatiens, not the sun-loving impatiens. Begonias and impatiens are plants that are known for shade and shade lovers, but they'll thrive in sun if they get enough water. So this is all, gardening is a mix of science and art and trial and error. Remember, we've got huge assortments of plants and products to take care of your plants in our stores, and we can help you with your problems. That's what we're here. We've grown and we've been successful because we help our customers be successful. So thank you all. And I'm going to turn this back over to Gracie.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to say, as a beginning gardener and plant parent myself, it's been so helpful to have all of the experts at English Gardens. You know, we have people in every area of the store that are super knowledgeable, and they can answer so many specific questions, general questions you have about care tips, lots of good stuff. And we have a lot of really great blogs on our website as well, full of information that can be helpful for you about certain projects, certain plants, lots of good stuff there. So be sure to visit our website as well. So thank you guys so much for attending. We've covered a lot of great topics, and I think we squeezed in a pretty good amount. It looks like we're about a couple minutes over 8. My clock might be a little fast. But I think we squeezed in a really good amount of things. Great questions too. I was really happy to see such a variety of different topics. As I mentioned before, if you had a question that you didn't see answered tonight live, we have got it jotted down. I've got all of your questions recorded, so we will be in touch with you. Like Rick mentioned, it'll probably be Daryl reaching out or one of our other experts as well. And you can always submit new questions you have that might have popped up during this event to our contact form, which you can find on our website, and you will receive an email from us tomorrow with that included there as well. So feel free to submit anything there. We're always available, and your questions come right to me. So I will be sure to get it to the right source, and they will be able to help you out. So that is a wrap. Thank you to Rick, our other host tonight. And thank you to all our buyers and experts for being with us. And thank you to our attendees. I think it was a great first Zoom event. Thanks for your patience with all the technical difficulties. I know it happens on Zoom though. So thanks everyone. Have a great night.